There, that's it.
Right, which bit
Just
do I
click
press
that,
to make it full
and
screen?
then
Right, from the
go
beginning.
from the beginning. There you go.
Top job. Thank you. I knew I was going to get there. Sorry about that. I'm technically illiterate. It's not a very good look for a technical person. Right. Smart FIS. We set it up. I think getting on for 3 years ago now, and it stands for Smart Flexible Innovation Support. And it's a fund which replaced the previous Smart Cymru fund, which was a European funded program. This is entirely Welsh money that's funding this, and it's to deliver against our innovation strategy.
Davies, WhatsApp audio.
Right, yeah, no problems. It's to deliver against our innovation strategy and to provide support to organisations for effectively meeting their research development and innovation aims. I won't sort of dwell on the sort of high level stuff, but we're about helping Welsh organisations achieve innovation excellence. So we're about helping you undertake RD&I and to exploit new innovation, but we're also about looking at product, process, and service innovation. So where an example of that might be where a company is looking to bring in something that's new to the company, but not necessarily that innovative to optimize their production. And we're looking to sort of help organizations upskill. We're looking to help them grow. We're looking for there to be a benefit to society generally. So increasingly, we're seeing decarbonisation and the circular economy as part of our funding asks. And when we appraise applications, we consider these issues as quite central. And more applications are being made with an element of this as part of the ask for support. The idea is that we work with organisations to develop an innovation plan, to help them deliver your innovation plan, and to move to a place where you're much more innovative than you were when you set out. And in that, we help you lever in funding, RD&I funding from various different sources. And our funding offer is part of that program. So it's what's known as the Stairway to Innovation Excellence, and that's what we're looking to support. So what we do in Wales under FIS is that we work in Wales, but we've got this access to a UK-wide network of specialists beyond our own sort of internal support. We can help you access local and national funding streams. And we've got this advice from a framework of advisors. Our innovation and collaboration specialists are, they've got various backgrounds. We're quite sort of disparate division, really, but we've got people from engineering, from science, a lot of people with industrial background, and also people with a background in intellectual property. And particularly how to protect that. So again, I refer to funding opportunities, financial support, co-funding activities, supporting through specialist consultancy provision, and helping collaboration. Who can access our support? Any size business, although our intervention rates for funding do vary according to how large you are and what you're looking to do. Research organisations and academic institutions, which we can usually fund at 100% intervention. The same goes for third sector organisations, but we can also work with local authorities, health boards, and other public sector bodies. What we can offer you depends on organisation and type of project. So I'll give an example here for business. At level 1, where we support some organisations to undertake a technical and commercial feasibility study, we typically offer you after about 25,000 for a project, which is typically after about 6 months duration. And the intervention rate is usually after about 70%. So you can have a company come to us and say, we want to do £40,000 worth of consultancy work in order to develop an idea. And we're a small company. We would offer you £25,000 against that if you pass through the appraisal process. And that can support desktop work, the involvement of subcontractors and consultants, a bit of limited laboratory scale work as part of your feasibility study. That then leads on to you developing an innovation plan and roadmap in order to help you where you want to go at our level 2 offer, which is industrial research through to experimental development. And typically we will support after about £100,000 per year for 2 years. You can leverage in a digital funding. I'll come on to that now because that's what this presentation is all about. And the intervention rate for that varies. And again, it's up to about 70% for an industrial research project, 45% for an experimental development project. And I can provide you with definitions of what this means if you need that. I haven't put it in the presentation, but I can refer to that later. There are also various different funding uplifts where we're looking at collaborative projects, so we can go beyond those intervention rates on occasionally. What we're talking about today, though, is circular economy funding. We can also access, as part of the FIS programme, funding from our circular economy fund for appropriate activities. And this covers 3 different areas of activity. We're looking at research, development, and innovation to support the circular economy. We're looking at helping organisations transition to a circular economy. And we could be looking at support for upscaling to a circular economy. So the latter 2 are going to be more about process innovation or organisational innovation rather than sort of straightforward research and development. And so we give examples there of supportable activities, R&D, collaborative industry-led R&D, investment in capital equipment. And the information that we need from an organisation is we want to see what your short, medium and long-term innovation goals are, what you consider the impact of those to be. We want to consider activities related to product, process and organisational innovation. We want to look at gaps in your capability and your capacity and how this funding would help bridge those. And we want to consider relevant partners in collaborative projects. Is there a shared risk and a shared reward where you have these collaborative projects? So funding under the Circular Economy Fund, we have done this previously on a case-by-case basis, and we've offered capital funding support, typically up to about 250k for certain projects. Capital is possibly a misnomer. There's usually an element of revenue type support here, but it's generally about providing the wherewithal to an organisation to undertake something that's quite a marked change in what they're doing. Going forward, we're probably going to keep this, but we're thinking about adding in a lower tier offer at £20,000 for simple capital asks. We used to offer something under the previous Smart Cymru programme, known as the Innovation Voucher Scheme, where applicants could come to us and say, for example, we need to buy a 3D printer, and we need to spend £40,000 on the 3D printer. Can we have some money towards that because it will help us do X, Y, and Z? And we would make an offer which was typically 50% of the capital award up to £25,000. And it was a very simple application process, and all they needed to demonstrate was that there would be a certain amount of organizational or process of innovation happening as a result of this. So, for example, they might want a 3D printer in order to help them prototype parts that were currently being sent off to a third party, and this would therefore save them time, money, and effort. And it was that sort of level of argument. We're looking, can we do this to support the circular economy area? Because to my mind, one of the barriers for organizations that want to further develop, particularly the recycling and reuse of material streams, often comes down to primary processing needs. You might not be collecting enough material for recycling because you don't have the wherewithal in terms of baling it up, for example, to make a meaningful amount. So it's that sort of level. Monitoring equipment as well is, I think, quite important for potential circular economy projects. We haven't finalised this yet, but we expect it to be much simpler. And we'll have some internal discussions on this over the next couple of weeks to try and present you with something coherent that you can buy into. What do we want out of circular economy applications? Well, one or more of the following outcomes. We want organizations to show that they can increase the amount of recycled, reused, and or remanufactured materials using new or existing products or processes. We like to see waste reduction in action. We like to see improved productivity. We like to see new or improved products or processes developed and or introduced. And for products or processes, also read services, because we have seen applications that are about service development, which is effectively helping the wider sort of circular economy. So we do see software applications, for example, come in as part of this. And possibly obtaining a recognized relevant standard or kite mark to demonstrate some circular economy outcomes. So the next steps on this, we've got options really. We offer free online innovation support meetings known as CRISP. Simon Cooper is on the call, who runs the CRISP network. He has meeting dates set out throughout the year where we have CRISP meetings, and effectively it's the forum of specialists from various different areas. People turn up at CRISP, they give their pitch for 5-10 minutes. They're asked a whole lot of sort of slightly searching and good-natured questions. A discussion is had, and then hopefully we point them in a direction as to where they go next. It's like Dragon's Den, but all the dragons are quite toothless, so you'll be all right. Simon can talk to this in more detail if he's got 2 minutes. If we consider FIS or the Circular Economy Fund as a potential funding stream, then contact with the Innovation Specialist team through our Business Wales mailbox is the next step. And we can put the Innovation Specialist in front of you to discuss a follow-up discussion and talk through our application process for funding. We then undertake technical and financial appraisal due to an offer of funding being made. And that's what I do. I undertake technical and financial due diligence. And we can look at draft applications before you put a formal one in. And for this particular process here, where CAKE are introducing projects, Professor Walpole and his team will assist in delivering the above. We're still kind of working out a detail here, and we'll have further information to follow. I think Gary's got a flow chart that he wants to show to talk through this. So really, this is it. You can contact the Business Wales hotline. They'll put a specialist to your query. we can talk through an innovation plan or proposal, which you can review and submit for approval. And that's that really. So any questions? If I stop sharing that, I can see people.
So we've got a few in the chat. There's one around how long the process usually takes. I know that's an inexact science. Have you got any sort of benchmarks that you could suggest there, Aid?
Depends what you want to do. How long is a piece of string? If you come to us and you want to do a simple level 1 application under FIS for, say, a technical commercial feasibility study to look at, say, a circular economy project, and it's not that involved, we'd probably get you an offer of funding in 3 weeks, something like that, after you submitted the application. And how long you make the project then is entirely up to you. But typically a TCF project is anything between a month and sort of 6 months. They usually are around about 2 to 3 months in duration. I've written a couple of appraisal reports on TCF applications last week. And these are applicants who came in May to seek some money for a short-term round project. I got the thing and appraised it within a couple of days, and we've got offers of funding out. So it can be very, very quick. At level 2, it's more involved. We've got to be asking, because at level 1, it's all just a theoretical thing. You're doing a desktop study. You're going to get an output, and the output of the desktop study is a technical commercial feasibility report, which is primarily to effectively advise yourself. You've gone into this with an idea, you've tested it against the marketplace, you've tested it against the sort of regulatory and technical constraints, and you've come out at the end of all this with an idea as to whether or not your idea is going to work. And following that, then you might want to come back and say, right, can we have some further funding at level 2? That's more involved because, for example, if you were to come along and you had an idea, you were running a process whereby you wanted to incorporate more recycled content into that process, the technical commercial feasibility study is going to tell you whether or not you can do it. And what the regulatory constraints might be. The level 2 work is where you effectively have to then start doing this in earnest. And so there may well be a need for environmental permits. There might be a need to have these discussions with the various different regulators. And then you're introducing other variables into the equation, and the project can be a lot longer as a result because you've got more unknowns. And so there isn't really a straight answer in terms of a level 2 project. It takes as long as it takes. But in terms of how long we take to appraise it, we hope to still be able to do those fairly quickly, within a month or so after you've made the application, if that helps.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it does. Sorry, my headphone was up. Yeah, thank you for answering that.
No props. Do you want to give me? I mean, if people want to chuck hypotheticals at me, I might be able to give you a bit more granularity on all of this.
There was a question in the chat about intervention rates, Aid, and I've suggested that certainly for level 1, in kind, so that the time that a business spends on the project can be used as the make weight within the intervention. Is that correct?
I don't know. I'll have to get the answer for that. We do some in-kind support, but yeah, I'll have to find out. Generally, say someone comes to us and asks for 20 grand worth of funding on a £40,000 project, they've got to find the rest of it. Now, whether or not that can be an in-kind match, we don't see that necessarily that often. Companies will generally come to us and say, our match is from company reserves or something like that. But I think we do we do allow that. Right, I've got lots of questions one after the other. So if I go to Ranjit first.
Hey, Adrian. It's interesting, the presentation. The presentation seems to center around a business who might want to develop a process in which they can improve or develop circular economy. What if your business is actually going to allow other organizations to improve so it's a multiplier effect? Because it always seems to be centered on manufacturing in Wales, about um, how how you are improving your scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. But what if the product actually helps others to improve theirs?
We've supported
Yeah.
such applications. Yeah, we would consider
Okay.
that. Look, it's easier for us if it is a sort of straightforward. How do we help the business improve? But
Yes.
I totally get where you're coming from. I think the reticence on our behalf always comes back to the fact that it's a lot harder for us to try and then consider a tangible outcome if you're looking to develop an enabling tool. But we have helped that sort of thing in the past, and I would never say never. It's always worth having that discussion.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
I don't know if I can see the chat. Can I see the chat?
There was, in terms
Should
of match
be-
funding, does it
Yep.
differ between
Oh, right, got it.
capital projects and projects with mostly revenue? So level 1 tends to be a mix of revenue, so research desk based, and sometimes some equipment. Does the intervention rate then differ? And if so, is in-kind match permissible on
Yeah, it depends
desk-based?
what you want to do. If you're a micro or small organization, and the definition of a small organization is actually reasonably large. If you're a small organization, we can fund you up to 70%. If you are a small organization looking at a collaborative application, that can be up to 80%. We can't go beyond that because those are the innovation rates that are set in the RD&I streamlined guidance scheme. And this comes on then to the question I can see from Natasha in the chat. Definitions of what a class as innovation are set out in that scheme. In minimum thresholds, there aren't really. We've supported applications that want £2,000 or £3,000 worth of funding in the past. There's kind of a sort of I don't know. There is a point below which we would probably look to try and tinker with our funding scheme to make it easier to apply for, because we wouldn't want to see people jump through various hoops in order to just get £2,000 or £3,000. It's probably not worth your time. But yeah, in theory, we have seen applications that are really quite small, particularly with community groups. Community groups may not want very much, but we get quite a good return on that. So it's open to discussion again. I should have added a link to the RD&I streamlined guidance in my presentation, and I didn't. So what I will do is provide that to Kate colleagues after the call, and we can send that out separately. But I can point at that where the definitions are. It's kind of like our Bible, really, in terms of when we look at it to try and work out where things fit. But they're quite wide. It doesn't have to be a brand new idea or necessarily specific to a business. Process optimization is covered. And process optimization is effectively just doing something that you already do more efficiently. So your innovation may well be a fairly prosaic bit of small-scale capital investment that saves you from producing so much production waste. It can be that simple. We've had people come to us with the idea of reincorporating production waste back into product rather than sort of just dumping it. And that sort of thing, although it's not terribly innovative, putting the right stuff in the right bin and making sure it ends up back in the process, it still has a positive outcome. Who's next? Yeah, thanks, Gary. The definitions they're not just on FTE, it's also on
Turnover.
yeah, turnover and profit from memory. But it's kind of like any 2 from 3. Generally, if you're turning over less than about 5 million a year, you employ less than 50 people, you're going to be a small business. 98% of our businesses in Wales, if not more, are small or micro. So, we don't deal with large businesses that often. Yeah, I can show you where in the guidance it sets our intervention rates out. It is a bit convoluted, but it is all there.
So
I missed something.
just in terms of the innovation definition, it broadly agrees with UK Innovation Survey, doesn't it? That it's product or process innovation that's new to the company, new to the sector, or new to the market. So as you pointed out earlier, Aid, it could be implementing a process that's known, but it's not known in your organisation, and that process increases productivity, reduces waste, or does both.
Yeah, completely agree. And it also includes services. So we funded we funded, for example, an organisation to develop a software suite which enables companies to model their energy use more accurately, and hence gain insights into that and save money as a result. We have made the distinction deliberately within our circular economy funding that we are not just looking at applications that save CO2. And it's not that we don't support applications that save CO2, but we've done this because we don't want to see applications that are simply about energy reduction. We think applications that simply for energy reduction are a really good idea, but we worry that if we open that door, we'll be overrun by people who want just to do that. And it's about really that the fund is really about the circular economy and not just about energy reduction. So if organizations come to us and say, we've got a circular economy project, and as part of this, there's an energy reduction element to it, then we would consider that, but we wouldn't consider the energy reduction element in its own right, just in isolation. Not that we don't agree with it, but we can't just afford to have 1 million applications from people who want to put up solar panels. So it's just a policy thing, really. There should really be, I personally think there should be other government funding for this, but it's not an area that I'm involved with, and so I tend to keep out of it. I'm all about the circular economy. Any other queries?
Yes, there's another question in the chat from Sai. Can you apply through a newly registered company entity as a startup?
Yeah, absolutely. We deal with startups quite a lot. We have to be a bit more creative in terms of their match funding. We have sometimes supported companies on a promise of match funding. So effectively, we've withheld our funding offer until they've clarified the match funding state. We often find that an offer of government funding is quite nice to third-party investors because it's kind of guaranteed money. And so by us making an offer in principle, it then helps applicants go off and sort of leverage in that funding that the entrepreneurial types have hitherto been a little bit cagey about. And so we try to be as flexible as we can, really. But yeah, we work with newly registered companies all the time. The one thing we would ask is that you do have to have some kind of a Welsh context. registered office in Wales, or at least the intent to move to Wales at some point. And again, we've supported organisations on inward investment grounds whereby they aren't in Wales at the moment, but they're going to come to Wales, and we've kind of basically caveated the funding on that. In that regard, and we have to be like this because we don't have that much money, and therefore we want to make sure it's spent sort of to benefit our economy. In terms of the outputs, I don't think I dwelled on this at all in my presentation, but historically we looked at stuff and we said we're putting funding into this. We want to see jobs and financial return. That's not the case now. We want to see a return against the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act goals. And so if that return doesn't actually result in job increase, or it doesn't particularly make a company that much more economically viable, that's fine, as long as there is a circular economy. There are defined circular economy outputs, because they are then feeding back into the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. We can talk to this in more detail when we speak to individual applicants around what we like to see. Sorry, Ian, you've got a query?
Yeah, just it's a bit of a follow-up from Ranjit, because I've had an idea. I run a services company, and I've been thinking of doing specifically supporting people in communicating circular economy principles. And what you just said about the Future Generations Act kind of like sparked something in my head, because if I remember correctly, there's a big bit there about access to culture, right? And education of future generations. So I think I'm just workshopping this out loud. In terms of the fund, if I were to argue that the service that we're researching will not so much be a commercially viable product to sell to other companies, but rather something that will support those goals, broadly speaking. Is that?
Yeah, potentially. We'd have to sort of have the discussion, I think, on a case-by-case basis. But in principle, we haven't long supported under FIS an application for a company that was looking to further develop an environmental education offering in terms of providing to the market remote learning for the circular economy stroke sustainability outcomes. So yeah, in theory, we could support that sort of thing. Okay,
perfect. Do you happen to remember what that was called?
Yeah, we supported an outfit called Climate Link Up, LINKUP, who have 3 different market offers that they're looking to develop. One of which is an environmental education offer. They've got a website if you Google for them, and you should be able to find what they're about. They're not the only outfit that we've supported in that manner. We have supported under FIS other sort of educational programs in the past, because generally we're looking for to support something there that isn't already there. If you're looking to do something like that, and you are looking to develop something that's innovative, we would expect, as part of any technical and commercial feasibility study, that you consider the market and competitors and the demand, the need, the sort of ongoing, where you expect to be in 5-10 years time, because that's quite integral to any future funding ask. And that's not the same place as you might be if you were simply a manufacturing company looking to develop a more efficient process. You already know what your market is and what your competitors are, because you're already operating in that area. You just want to make your widgets 10% more effectively. So it's a different sort of place, if you see what I mean. But each case on its own merits, and we're happy to talk to people about almost anything really.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Any more queries?
Not from me.
Top job. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Please, yeah.
Coming back to the slide about the Business Wales support with the phone number,
Yeah.
what would that look like if you call up? Would it be online support? How many meetings might you get with an advisor, and going from there?
Typically, what happens with the Business Wales call is you'd end up speaking to one of the Business Wales advisors, and they then talk it through with you and put you in touch with the innovation team, one of the innovation specialists, and then they would come and have a chat with you over Teams just to try and get to grips with your idea. And it's how long is a piece of string. Then they'll give you as much time as you need. It's not limited to well, you can only have sort of a certain amount of time from us. It's we'd look at the idea and we'd work with you to try and help you to develop it. And sometimes we end up with relationships with the clients that go on for months before we see any form of application, because not everything's equal, is it really? Did you have an idea in terms of a potential sort of process or product? I mean, we're happy to take these things offline and have a chat with you, you know, to give you an informal view to start off with. One thing I'm not clear on, and if I'm not clear, you won't be either, is where we fit with Gary's team of assistants, and this might be a good point to bring Gary in to outline how he thinks this might work, because we've effectively co-opted Gary and his colleagues to help us deliver against this, because they know an awful lot about the circular economy, and there's hardly any of us doing this in Welsh Government. So this would be a good time for you to give your pitch, Gary.
Okay, I do have a slide which I'm going to share, albeit it's showing the process that you've got as Smart FIS Circular Economy Fund at the moment in blue, and then what the Cake team can offer to applications that come through this channel or through Cake participants. But in essence, what we're saying is, after this, we'll send out the application form, or a form that will allow you to articulate what your current proposed project will look like. Then we'll ask you to send it back to us. Within the email, we'll put in some links to the pitch events that AD's mentioned, so that you will have the form that would enable you to pitch in that process, because there is a format that's used. We're happy for you to complete that form and then go direct to the pitching events, which we will provide links for, so you can book into one of those. We're equally happy for you to forward the form that you fill out back to us, so that we can provide some constructive feedback, and then for you to go into that pitch event. So basically, we're providing a service whereby we'll look over what you first draft, give you some suggested amendments, if indeed any are required, and then you go back in to the Welsh Gov process. And again, depending on what happens at those pitch events or the CRISP events as they're described, we can then support you again to pick up maybe areas that the panel thought that you could improve. So I'm conscious that's a slide that contains the entire process. So I think it's best for me to summarize. We'll send out some information immediately after this. That will be a recording of this event, so you can recap on certain areas. The slides that Adrian has used, a link to the forthcoming CRISP events or the pitch events, and a form that will enable you to articulate the proposed innovation or project that you're looking at. We'd suggest you send that form back to us. We can give you some feedback, and then you can forward that on in order to attend one of those CRISP events. But there's nothing at all stopping you going direct in to the current Welsh Gov process. Everyone comfortable with that? Any immediate thoughts or questions? Again, we can answer any questions that you think of post this, and we can answer any questions that you might have once you get the document, the form that allows you to start articulating, detailing, or even just simply drafting really the project or the proposed innovation that you want to look at for funding. So I'll stop sharing that. And yeah, as mentioned, we'll be sending out an email. There'll be a document in there that you can use to draft your idea. If you're a bit further along the line already, by all means, we're happy to look at that. And there will be links in there so that you can start to get a feel for when those pitch events, those CRISP meetings are taking place. So then you can maybe work back in terms of to get your application ready, your draft outline ready, so that you can prepare for those events. Anything I've missed, Jill?
No, don't think so.
Okay. So if there aren't any other questions, we'll finish there. You will have an email shortly, and we will detail the process in that. And don't be at all reticent to come back and ask any questions.